Hi, continuing with the series on our different body organs, the magic of life, we look into the nervous system. You can review the previous videos in the playlist I'm linking. Next to the cardiovascular system, the nervous system is most important for our existence. Our brain has basic control functions as well as the higher functions like memory, learning, language, and behavior, and this is what defines us as individuals. And this is what differentiates us from other organisms which have smaller brains. The primates as a group have bigger brains and they have adopted evolving posture, they have better refined use of the hands, and humans are the highest functioning primates. That is because our brain is much more defined. The front part of the brain, the cerebrum, makes us what we are. The central nervous system, the upper part of the brain, and the peripheral nervous system, the spinal cord and the peripheral nerves, and the autonomic nervous system totally combine together to form the nervous system. So different illustrations of the same. So we have the brain sitting in the skull, the spinal cord descends down the vertebral column, so the vertebrae protect the spinal cord running down, and the nerves come out of the spinal cord. Some of the nerves come from the brain directly and they are called the cranial nerves. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves with different functions, mostly around the face, but also coming down to the heart and the digestive tract, the vagus nerve. So the brain itself has different parts. The cerebrum, which is the most important development differentiating humans from the other primates. Different lobes of the brain, the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, occipital lobe, the parietal lobe. The hippocampus, which is related to the basic functions called the limbic functions. Cerebellum, which is more to do with muscle tone and movement. The medulla, pons, midbrain, these usually have the roots of the cranial nerves which control different functions. They control the respiration, they control the basic function of the heart and so on. And in the spinal, we have, according to this vertebral numbers, we have cervical, the first 7 cervical roots, the thoracic T1 to T12, and the lumbar L1 to L5. The sacral is of course fused, the coccyx is vestigial, and these are the roots which supply the different parts. So according to their origin, they supply C1 to 3, cover the neck and the muscles of the diaphragm, and we have C4, C5, C6, and connecting the upper limb and the fingers up to C8. T1 connects the hand as well. T2 to T12 connect the intercostals and abdominal muscles. The lumbar mostly connect the upper part of the legs, and the sacral connects the bowel and bladder. So different roots have different innervations for different parts of the body. The peripheral nervous system is basically efferent, which is the motor system, and the afferent or the sensory system. All the nerves carry both the efferent and afferent fibers according to which area they supply. The efferent has autonomic, which is involuntary, and which is again divided into parasympathetic, sympathetic, and the enteric nervous system, which is specific to the enteric, and the ganglion cells lining the muscles of the intestine have a role in that. Sympathetic mainly deals with adrenal hormones, and you have sympathetic receptors in the bloodstream and the different organ systems. You have nerve endings which release sympathetic neurotransmitters as well. Parasympathetic, the vagus nerve is a good example of the parasympathetic system. You have parasympathetic components in the bloodstream as well. And the efferent also is somatic or voluntary, which is controlled both by the cerebral cortex for voluntary responses and reflex responses from the lower parts of the brain and the cerebellum. The sensory is mainly the different sensations. The fine sensations we call touch, pain, proprioception, which is the position related, all these come from, and the specialized senses, vision, hearing, taste, and so on. So what does the peripheral nervous system do? It connects the central nervous system to the different organs, limbs, and skin. It allows the brain and spinal cord to receive and send information to other parts of the body, and it carries sensory and motor information to and from the central nervous system. So it's like a messenger for the central nervous system to act. It also regulates involuntary body functions like heartbeat and breathing. This is mainly through innervation from the brainstem, and also through the sympathetic and parasympathetic, which work as feedback regulation for these organs as well. So the central nervous system or the peripheral nervous system, they have the nerves, the nerve cell or the neuron, and the axon and dendrites. So the axons basically conduct the impulse, and they connect with the next neuron through the dendrites at the synapse. So the dendrites form a network, so they can branch out. So that's the top part of the nerve cell. So you can see here that the nerve cell or the neuron, the axon is put in blue because it has a myelin sheath around it, which makes the conduction much faster. And the dendrites are the branches out from the neuron, which can connect with the surrounding neurons and form a plexus, or they can connect with the axons end in another connection with the neighboring cell. So there are multiple neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that help in transfer of signals between the nerves and at the neuromuscular junction. There are various neurotransmitters: glutamate, aspartate, GABA, dopamine, acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is specific at the neuromuscular junction, and these receptors can be excitatory or inhibitory according to their function. We have close integration of the nervous and muscular systems along with the skeletal system to support our movements. You can refer my video on the musculoskeletal system as well. And sensory feedback is critical to help us feel, to protect ourselves, because once you lose the nerve supply sensation, for example in diabetics, for peripheral nerves don't function well, and you are more prone to injury because of that. So the cranial nerves I mentioned are the nerves which originate directly from the brain, and the spinal nerves connect the rest of the body. We have 12 cranial nerves with different functions. The cranial nerve 1 is olfactory or smell, 2 is optic and visual acuity directly from the back of the eye. The eye movement is controlled by 3, which is oculomotor, trochlear, which is 4, and the abducens, which is the number 6. The trigeminal nerve has different functions: the facial sensation, as well as some movements in the face, and also movement of the eyelids and so on. The facial nerve has main function of face movement. The auditory nerve is for hearing, and it's number 8. Glossopharyngeal is for taste and also for swallowing. The vagus has sensation in the throat and also the vocal cord movement, and peristalsis, it supplies the intestine. It also has the parasympathetic nervation to the heart. The 11 is accessory for the head and shoulder movement, and 12 is the tongue movement or the hypoglossal. So this is another illustration of how the roots of the nucleus of the cranial nerves, and then the nerves move around different pathways, and they come out to supply what we discussed. So I'm not going to repeat the same again. So this is, for example, the hypoglossal for the tongue, and the vagus nerve multiple systems, and we have the vestibulocochlear for the hearing, the optic for the eyes, and also the multiple movements of the eyes involved in these 3, 4 and 6. The special senses, the eyes control the vision. So we have the external part of the eye, we have the sclera or the white of the eye. This is the black part that we see, and we have the clear area in the black. The black part of the eye has the muscle of the eye called the iris. You would see the iris of different colors in different races. Most of the dark skin races have brown or black iris, while the light skin may have blue, green and so on, or different shades. The iris controls the size of the pupil. The pupil regulates the entry of light into the eye. And we have the eyelids to protect our eyes. This is the inside of the eyeball, and this is the outermost part of the eye, the cornea, which is the transparent part. The transparent part allows light to go through, and the pupil regulates how much light goes through. We have the lens, which regulates, and the lens is controlled by the iris, how much it functions as well. So there are ciliary muscles which control the lens position. We have the vitreous, which acts as the cushioning effect for the eyelids and also the eyeball. The different muscles, the rectus muscle and so on, which help with the eye movement. The optic nerve at the back, which gets the axons from all the rods and cones lining and it carries as an electrical impulse to the brain, which finally interprets the information as vision. So in terms of refractory errors, we have related to the length of the eyeball. So we have myopia or hypermetropia, and we have short-sightedness, which is myopia, where the eyeball may be small. We have long-sightedness or hypermetropia, which is corrected by a convex lens. Astigmatism is related to the corneal surface, which is corrected by cylindrical lens, and cataract, opacification of the lens where the light doesn't get through. You may also have opacification of the corneal surface, which may be one of the reasons for blindness following injury. Optic atrophy affects the optic nerve, and this also leads to blindness if it is severe. We have some conditions like multiple sclerosis, which affect optic nerve as well, and that affects vision intermittently. It's a kind of autoimmune condition or degeneration of the brain. Squint is a defect in coordinated movement between the eyes or cross eye, and we can have tumors developing in the eye as well. For the eye's function, we can do testing for the refractory errors and slit lamp to look at the inner structure of the eye. Different layers can be seen. Ultrasound to look at the actual structure. If you have tumors in the eye, for example, like retinoblastoma, you can do the ultrasound, CT or MRI. MRI is obviously the most sensitive. Recently, we have different treatments for the eye problems, including laser treatment. Cataracts, obviously, you remove the lens which is opacified, and you can put intraocular lens artificially made. You have LASIK surgery for correcting refractory errors by affecting the curve of the cornea, and different options for this. The other special function is the hearing, where the external ear receives the sounds. The ear canal takes the sound inside to the middle ear, and we have a tympanic membrane between the outer external or ear canal and the middle ear. The middle ear has the typical smallest bones in the body, the ossicles, so malleus, incus and stapes, and these bones connect to the inner ear, conduct the inner eardrum, and the cochlea is the organ related to hearing. It also is part of the vestibular system, which gives us the sense of position. We may have ear infections like acute and chronic otitis media, which is related to the middle ear. Media is for middle ear. And you may have a break in the tympanic membrane, you have pus leaking out. This can affect children or adults. We can have hearing loss, deafness, which is due to the nerves problem, nerve related, called sensory neural. It can be congenital, or it can be due to toxins related to medication, for example. It can be related to infections damaging the nerve as well. And we can have conductive deafness due to the physical structures like the ossicles becoming tight, a condition called otosclerosis, or you may have problems related to fluid in the ear, which dampens the sound conduction. The middle ear is also connected to our throat, and so the swallowing function helps to keep this tube open. Sometimes when you're traveling in a plane, you feel stuffy, and this is because the middle ear gets blocked, and when we close our nose or breathe against it, the eustachian tube, which connects the middle ear to the throat, opens up. So you can see here the connection to the throat, the eustachian tube, and it ventilates the ear. The adenoids are a lymphatic tissue behind our nose, and this can enlarge in growing children. The adenoid enlargement not only obstructs the nose, but it also obstructs this eustachian tube, and it affects the middle ear drainage. So you may have something called glue ear with fluid retained in the middle ear, and it causes deafness, which is of a conductive type. One of the tests we use to assess hearing is audiometry. You have pure tone audiometry, you have tympanometry, which looks at the conduction of gas in the ear, and we can assess the ear structure by MRI or CT scan. We also have nerve conduction tests to assess both hearing, vision, and also the peripheral nerve functions. The other special senses include smell, olfaction, where the nose plays a role, taste from the taste buds present on the tongue surface, touch through our sensory system. The hands are the major organs for touch, and the vestibular system, which is part of our inner ear, important for balance. The representation of the different areas of the body on the brain is called the cortical homunculus. So you have a sensory homunculus to receive the sensations and interpret them, and we have a motor homunculus. It's almost similar in the distribution. So for example, the foot doesn't have too much of representation. So this is the inner portion of the brain, the outer part of the brain. So you can see what portion the hand itself has, almost as much as the whole leg, and the face is a huge representation. The tongue, the eyes, nose, these are all special senses and they occupy a big portion of the brain. So the movement of these portions also needs finer refinement. So you can see how much the hand and the face occupy compared to the rest of the body. Very interesting fact. We also have distribution of the sensations called the dermatome according to the nerve supply, and we have different nerves supplying different parts of the body according to the dermatome, and myotome is where the muscle movements are regulated according to the nerves which conduct those portions. We will be discussing the excretory system next. Thank you.